low. People don't really understand the condition. They don't know how it happens, why it happens. They just don't consider it, the children to be affected. And as a result, there is lack of diagnosis, misdiagnosis, delayed diagnosis, all sorts of problems. But in terms of symptoms, so yes, as I said, so obviously joint involvement is the primary manifestation, and there's a whole spectrum as I described. In addition, it can affect, so in children, the other major problem we have is its effect on growth. So it can cause growth stunting, especially if it is one of the weight-bearing joints, or it can cause limb length discrepancy. So we have to be quite active in terms of recognizing those and addressing those issues early on. It's those sort of impact on quality of life, mobility, growth, whether the child is thriving or not, all those things, achieving milestones. So those are all quite important. And then, as I said, about 10 to 11% are ANA positive, which has association with blindness. So the sight loss associated with JIA, so that's quite a serious consideration. And similarly, with systemic onset JIA, the risk of sort of organ involvement, internal organ involvement, particularly with systemic onset JIA, there is a concern about sort of hepatosplenomegaly, for example. There is a concern about with its involvement of potentially kind of involve the heart as well. So again, those are rare. So those are the sort of manifestations really. Is that what you wanted to ask? Or?
Yes, definitely. And actually you gave a really good answer. So thank you very much for that. I also wanted to know about the treatment options. Do you think there are sufficient options available, or are they, what is your thought in general about their efficacy and their help with these with this disease?
Yeah. So I think, the answer for, medication for all this indication is pretty much the same, which is that options are insufficient. There is huge unmet need. So basically the treatments for all these conditions are pretty similar. They are basically immunomodulators, corticosteroids, and biologic therapies. So that's pretty much options for all of those, with the exception of fibromyalgia. So in terms of, they probably work for about 60 to 70% of patients across all these 4 indications. But a third of patients is where those treatments are not fully effective, or partial inefficacy is even a bigger issue. And that's where we're in need of more treatments, more modes of action, and certainly more. We need also need some understanding about combination therapies, about the optimization of therapies. So all those areas, still unmet need.
Okay. And what about the diagnosis? So do you think there are sufficient tools available to diagnose the patient at an early stage of the disease progression?
So again, with all these conditions, another issue is that there is no, there is no gold standard for diagnosis. So the diagnostic tools, basically, you still have to get a sort of a picture based on all the different diagnostic tools available. So that includes, obviously, in addition to the sort of clinical examination and history, would be biochemical tests, immunological tests, as well as imaging. And you then bring it all together to try and develop a picture of what condition is most likely. But you can't say that any test is 100% diagnostic or pathognomonic of that. So when we have that caveat, then as you can imagine, there's always need for more confirmatory diagnostic tools, which certainly we don't have for any of these conditions.
So if we talk about juvenile idiopathic arthritis for this moment, then do you think that the diagnosis, what proportion of your patients are diagnosed at an early stage?
So again, it depends how we define early. So if we say less than 6 months of symptom onset, then I would argue, so in UK, it's somewhere between 50 to 70% who are diagnosed